Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really fascinating source text titled The Golden Legacy of Neymar Junior We aren't just looking at a boring timeline of events here. We're actually breaking down the anatomy as a sporting icon to understand what built his legacy from the ground up. Through this breakdown, we're going to dissect the defining moments, the immense pressures, and the undeniable magic that propelled his career. So, get ready, because the journey we're about to go on is absolutely spectacular. But before we get into all the facts and figures, I gotta ask you a question. And this is going to be the lens through which we view this entire explainer. What truly makes a sports legacy golden? Is it just the sheer volume of goals? Is it how many trophies you can cram into a cabinet? Or is it, something a little more intangible? Something about the way a player makes the world feel when the ball is at their feet? As we step through the history of Neymar today, I want you to actively look for these clues. Keep this question in the back of your mind as we watch a young boy from Brazil transform into a global phenomenon. Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. Neymar's early history. To really grasp the history of Neymar, we kind of have to look at three distinct eras that defined his ascent. First up, the early years at Santos. This wasn't just a debut, it was a total eruption. He brought back that pure joy of Joga Bonito, leading Santos to their first Copa Libertadores title since Pelé back in 2011, proving that pure Brazilian flair was alive and well. Then, boom, the European breakthrough. Moving to Barcelona wasn't just a transfer, it was an evolution. He formed one-third of that absolutely legendary MSN trio alongside Messi and Suarez, proving he could adapt his game and conquer Europe. And finally, global recognition. Stepping out to become the primary playmaker for Paris Saint-Germain and the undisputed leader for the Brazilian national team, carrying the immense psychological weight of his country's expectations. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the source text captures the essence of that journey. It says, his history is written in the audacious flair of his youth, but his golden legacy is forged in the fire of global expectation. I mean, that perfectly hits the nail on the head, right? It tells us his story isn't just about the tricks, the flicks, or the innate talent he had as a teenager. It's about what happens when that pure, audacious flair collides with literally the heaviest expectations on the planet. His dedication to keeping his identity while carrying the weight of an entire nation, that is what truly solidifies his history. That collision with expectation launches us right into part 2, rising to global stardom. Number 1, that single digit visualizes the sheer impact of his rise. He became the number 1 most expensive transfer in football history, a record-shattering €222 million move to Paris Saint-Germain that fundamentally changed the economics of the whole sport forever. But even more than that, it represents his status as the number 1 focal point for the Brazilian national team, wearing that iconic number 10 shirt. The global pressure tied to that status is just immense. Imagine carrying the hopes of hundreds of millions of fans every single time you step onto the grass. No way you or I could handle that, right? That is what being number 1 meant in the context of his golden legacy. So how exactly did he handle all that pressure? Well, the text points out a few core elements that elevated him from just a star player to an absolute icon. First off, that Olympic gold triumph. He literally delivered the one major trophy Brazil had never won, scoring the winning penalty at the 2016 Rio Olympics right in his home country. That is history in its purest form. Second, his Champions League dominance. He orchestrated these historic tactical comebacks, most notably as the absolute architect of the 2017 remontada, which really cemented his elite status. And third, his cultural iconography. He successfully brought Ginga, that joyful street-style football of his youth, and fused it right into the rigid, hyper-athletic tactical setups of the modern game. You simply cannot argue with the evidence of his greatness when it spans international triumphs, club dominance, and a permanent shift in football culture. Which brings us to part 3, defining a golden legacy. So the crucial point is how the source actually defines this term. A golden legacy is defined as a sporting immortalization achieved not solely through statistical dominance, but by inspiring a generation through uniquely audacious skill, bearing the ultimate pressures of national identity, and permanently altering the cultural fabric of the game. Let's break that down for a sec. It explicitly states that stats just aren't enough. Anyone can score goals, but inspiring a generation, carrying the psychological weight of an entire footballing nation like Brazil, changing how the game is played and perceived globally, that is how the history of Neymar permanently cements this golden status. If you take away just one thing from our time together today, let it be this. The history of Neymar proves that a golden legacy is built on unforgettable moments. Why does this actually matter for us? Because, in the modern era of sports, we're completely obsessed with data, with spreadsheets, with optimization and expected goals. But Neymar's history reminds us that true athletic greatness, it's visceral. It's those moments that make you literally jump out of your seat. It's the moments of pure, unadulterated magic that are seared into our collective memory. That's the essence of his history. And that is what makes his legacy truly golden. And that leaves us with one final, pretty profound thought to chew on. As the next generation of footballing prodigies steps onto the pitch, how will the history of Neymar shape the standard for every golden legacy that follows? Has he set a bar for joy and creativity under pressure that is, simply impossible to replicate? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this deep dive sparked your curiosity and gave you a totally new perspective on athletic greatness.